The late 90s marked a highly unique turning point in the global landscape of cinematic history, an era when the terrifying boundaries between fabricated reality and absolute fiction were permanently blurred by a singular, low-budget masterpiece that captured the dark imagination of millions worldwide. It was a time when the early internet was just beginning to stretch its digital hands into everyday households, transforming from a simple tool of communication into a mysterious wilderness where myths could be born, cultivated, and disseminated with unprecedented speed. In the chilly autumn months of 1999, audiences flocked to movie theaters not just to be entertained, but to witness what many genuinely believed to be the final, tragic record of three young student filmmakers who had vanished without a trace in the dense, suffocating woods of Burkittsville, Maryland. The atmospheric tension surrounding this cultural phenomenon was so thick that it altered the very fabric of how horror stories were told, birthing an entire subgenre of found-footage cinema that relied heavily on psychological dread, raw human panic, and the terrifying absence of traditional Hollywood production values. At the dark heart of this massive cultural storm stood a young actress whose tear-stained face, heavy winter beanie, and hyperventilating confession became the defining, indelible image of an entire cinematic generation. She was the driving force behind a narrative that felt so completely authentic it shook viewers to their core, creating a widespread sense of profound unease that lingered long after the theater lights were turned back on. Yet, as the film climbed to astronomical financial heights and secured its place in the history books, the human beings behind the camera began to fade into a strange, unsettling obscurity, swallowed by the massive shadow of the very entity they had helped bring to life. If you find yourself captivated by these forgotten chapters of cinematic history, the untold struggles of creators, and the hidden mechanics of the entertainment industry, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the stories behind the screen. The incredible dichotomy between the film's unimaginable box office success and the harsh, immediate reality faced by its central performers serves as a sobering reminder of how the entertainment industry can elevate a concept while entirely decoupling it from the human lives that gave it breath. For decades, a quiet mystique has surrounded the central figure of that terrifying expedition into the Black Hills forest, with the public frequently wondering how someone could occupy the epicenter of such a massive cultural earthquake and then seemingly vanish into thin air. The original star had effectively separated herself from the glitz, glamour, and relentless pressure of the Hollywood machine, choosing instead a path of extreme isolation, deep personal reflection, and a complete reinvention of her identity far away from the flashing cameras and prying eyes of reporters. This deliberate disappearance was not merely a casual break from acting, but a profound, necessary rejection of a system that had simultaneously immortalized her image and left her navigating a complex emotional and financial landscape. For nearly a quarter of a century, her voice remained completely absent from the ongoing discussions, sequels, and corporate retrospectives that naturally pop up around a legendary intellectual property. The silence was absolute, a powerful boundary drawn between a past life filled with cinematic terror and a present existence rooted in the quiet rhythms of nature and personal autonomy. However, the delicate equilibrium of this self-imposed exile was recently shattered by a major corporate announcement that sent shockwaves through the global horror community, signaling that the dormant entity was once again being summoned from the depths of the cinematic vault. A massive multi-picture agreement between two of the most powerful contemporary forces in the horror genre promised to reimagine classic properties for a brand new generation of viewers who had never experienced the original wave of found footage. Hysteria. As the promotional gears began to turn, public statements from high-profile producers began to circulate, confidently suggesting that a grand reunion was underway and that all the foundational figures who had lent their names and faces to the original nightmare were enthusiastically returning to the fold. This public narrative, painted with broad strokes of corporate harmony and nostalgic unity, created an immediate wave of confusion and intense speculation across social media platforms and film forums alike. It appeared as though the past was being neatly packaged and resold, with the implication that everyone was on board for this lucrative new voyage back into the woods. It was precisely this point of public misunderstanding, this deliberate or perhaps careless merging of past images with future corporate endeavors, that finally compelled the long-silent actress to step out of the shadows and address the world. Her sudden reemergence was not driven by a desire to reclaim the spotlight or cash in on a renewed wave of public interest, but by a stark, fundamental need to clarify the truth of her position and protect the boundaries she had spent decades establishing. The announcement of the upcoming project, explicitly slated for a wide theatrical release on September 24, 2027, served as the ultimate catalyst for a public statement that would completely dissect the narrative of total creative unity. By breaking her decades-long silence, she did not just decline a part in a movie, she opened a window into the complex, often treacherous landscape of modern entertainment contracts, intellectual property rights, and the evolving technological threats to personal identity. The unfolding situation reveals a profound disconnect between the creators who historical documentation shows sacrifice their emotional well-being for a creative experiment, and the modern corporate structures seeking to revitalize that experiment using cutting-edge tools. As we look closely at the initial puzzle pieces of this unfolding story, we begin to see that her refusal is not a simple case of scheduling conflicts or creative differences, but a deeply calculated stand for personal sovereignty against an industry that is rapidly changing how it views human likeness, voice preservation, and creative freedom. The modern entertainment industry is currently witnessing a massive, highly calculated effort to revive legendary intellectual properties. And at the absolute forefront of this movement is a highly anticipated collaboration between Lionsgate and Blumhouse. This multi-picture agreement aims to systematically breathe fresh life into classic horror titles, translating their foundational concepts into high-tech experiences designed specifically for a contemporary audience that has grown up on digital streaming, rapid edits, and hyper-polished visual effects. The spearhead of this ambitious corporate campaign is the complete reimagining of the 1999 cinematic phenomenon, an announcement that immediately generated massive headlines across global entertainment trade publications. According to official corporate statements, this new cinematic vision is scheduled to hit theaters worldwide on September 24, 2027, marking a highly aggressive push into the autumn box office window. To helm this monumental task, the production company selected Dylan Clark, a young director who represents a dramatic shift in how modern filmmakers are discovered and cultivated. Much like contemporary viral creators who have built massive, dedicated followings on digital video platforms through independent short films, Clark built his entire creative reputation in the wilderness of YouTube, showcasing a unique ability to capture intense suspense and claustrophobic dread with minimal resources. This hiring decision was viewed by many industry insiders as a deliberate attempt to capture the raw, unpolished, and disruptive spirit that made the original found footage project so uniquely terrifying to audiences nearly 3 decades ago. To further solidify the project's legitimacy and appeal to longtime fans, the major Hollywood studios successfully negotiated contracts with the original 1999 creators, ensuring that Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick would come on board as executive producers. Furthermore, original cast members Joshua Leonard and Michael C. Williams were also successfully signed to the production team in executive roles, creating a powerful public narrative of a complete, harmonious family reunion. The corporate machinery was spinning a story of ultimate creative continuity, suggesting to the public that the classic team was unified in their desire to pass the torch to a new generation of creators. However, this carefully constructed image of total unity was abruptly shattered when it became overwhelmingly clear that the central star, Heather Donahue, was completely absent from the roster. At 51 years old, having completely removed herself from the Hollywood ecosystem decades prior, Donahue found her name and iconic historic image being actively used to promote this brand new corporate venture. The tension escalated dramatically when acclaimed horror producer James Wan publicly stated during a promotional event that all the original people who were involved in the primary found footage classic were actively on board for the upcoming remake. This definitive statement created immense confusion across global digital communities, leading many to believe that the reclusive actress had finally agreed to step back into the terrifying world that had defined her youth. Recognizing the growing narrative and what she termed a willful confusion regarding her actual relationship with the project, Donahue chose to utilize her social media channels to issue a stark, unfiltered clarification to the public. Her message was direct, uncompromising, and completely independent of any studio-approved public relations formatting, explicitly stating that she was absolutely not participating in the upcoming film. She revealed to her audience that she had indeed been approached by the studio and was offered a formal contractual agreement to join the production, but upon deep examination, the document raised profound, deeply troubling questions regarding her long-term creative and personal autonomy. The actress laid bare the complex reality of modern entertainment legalities, explaining that the proposed contract forced her to confront difficult, long-term questions regarding her fundamental rights. Future technological uses of her unique identity and voice, her legal ability to speak freely, and her financial compensation. In an era where artificial intelligence, digital likeness cloning, and synthetic voice generation are rapidly transforming the legal landscape of Hollywood, these specific concerns carry immense weight, shifting the conversation from a simple acting dispute into a landmark stand for personal sovereignty. Donahue made it abundantly clear that the legal parameters she was asked to sign away were simply not something she felt comfortable consenting to, ultimately concluding that preserving her personal autonomy and protecting her human identity mattered far more than any corporate paycheck or high-profile Hollywood comeback. To truly understand the profound depth of her current conviction and her absolute refusal to compromise, one must look closely at the extraordinary financial history and the severe systemic inequities that defined the original 1999 production. The primary film was a masterclass in independent resourcefulness, produced on a microscopic budget of just $60,000, with the three main actors enduring intense physical and psychological strain during an improvisational shoot in the Maryland wilderness. The performers were subjected to freezing temperatures, deliberate sleep deprivation, and dwindling food rations designed by the directors to elicit genuine, unvarnished panic and exhaustion on camera. When the finished project was acquired for distribution, it became an unprecedented global box office juggernaut, eventually raking in an astronomical $249 million worldwide. Yet, despite driving the narrative that generated these historic profits, Heather Donahue and her co-stars initially paid a literal pittance of just $1,000 each for their monumental efforts. As the film dominated global culture, the young actors found themselves in the deeply bizarre position of seeing their faces plastered on billboards and magazine covers worldwide while simultaneously struggling to pay their basic monthly rent. This extreme disparity eventually forced the trio to launch a massive, stressful lawsuit against the distributor, Artisan Entertainment, to secure a fair share of the wealth they had single-handedly generated. While they ultimately walked away from that bitter legal battle with approximately $300,000 each, the grueling process left deep emotional scars and exposed the deeply exploitative nature of the industry. The experience forever altered how Donahue viewed the concept of Hollywood success, fostering a deep-seated distrust of corporate entities that would ultimately guide her historic decision to completely walk away from the project decades later. Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, has actively promised that this new cinematic installment will completely revive the franchise for a new generation of horror enthusiasts, drawing upon his studio's massive track record of global box office hits. While specific plot details for the upcoming September 27 release remain heavily guarded secrets locked deep within the studio vaults, the overarching strategy is clear: to reintroduce a historic cultural phenomenon using modern distribution techniques. Yet, as the corporate wheels turn and the marketing campaigns gear up, the stark absence of the original lead actress stands as a silent, powerful monument to a conflict that Hollywood has never truly been able to resolve: the ongoing battle between corporate ownership of a profitable myth and the human beings who sacrifice their own well-being to make that myth believable in the first place. The profound choice to permanently walk away from the intoxicating allure of Hollywood fame is a path rarely taken. Yet for Heather Donahue, it became an absolute necessity for survival, leading her to embark on an extraordinary journey of total self-reinvention far from the chaotic media hubs of Los Angeles and New York. Seeking a life anchored in true authenticity, tangible reality, and absolute personal freedom, she ultimately chose to settle in the microscopic town of Freedom, Maine, a quiet, isolated rural community boasting a total population of fewer than 800 residents. In this tranquil environment, surrounded by rolling hills and the gentle, predictable cycles of nature, the former actress underwent a radical lifestyle transformation that completely redefined her daily existence and inner sense of purpose. She fully embraced complete sobriety, dedicated herself to the ancient spiritual practices of Buddhism, and built a successful, hands-on career as a professional medical marijuana farmer, learning to cultivate the land and find deep solace in the grounding, labor-intensive work of agriculture. This dramatic transition from a terrified horror icon into an independent, earthbound business owner was so profound that she documented the entire experience in a beautifully candid, critically acclaimed memoir titled Grow Girl, The Blossoming of an Unlikely Outlaw, a book that served as both a formal goodbye to her past cinematic identity and a proud celebration of her newfound autonomy. By completely changing her name for a truly fresh start, she effectively built an impenetrable wall between her private life and the corporate mechanisms of the global entertainment industry, ensuring that her identity could never again be easily exploited for someone else's financial gain. It is precisely this carefully cultivated peace and fierce independence that made her recent public statement regarding the upcoming Lionsgate and Blumhouse remake so incredibly significant for film historians and contemporary media analysts alike. Her refusal to sign the proposed contract was not an act of spontaneous anger or petty bitterness, but a deeply considered, highly philosophical stance against the increasingly dystopian legal realities that modern performers must navigate in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. By publicly highlighting her deep concerns regarding future technological uses of her unique identity and voice, Donahue single-handedly brought a critical, highly sensitive industry conversation into the mainstream spotlight, illustrating how modern digital archiving, artificial intelligence, and deepfake technology are threatening the fundamental rights of human creators. In the modern cinematic ecosystem, actors are no longer just signing away their time and physical performances. They are frequently asked to surrender the perpetual digital rights to their very likenesses, allowing multi-billion-dollar corporate entities to replicate their faces, voices, and emotional expressions across infinite future projects without further consent or fair financial compensation. For a woman who had already spent decades recovering from the intense economic exploitation of her youth, when she was famously paid a mere $1,000 for a performance that generated hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, signing away her perpetual digital identity was a complete impossibility. Her modern perspective represents a powerful historical warning to the incoming generation of digital filmmakers and internet-born creators, reminding them that corporate enthusiasm and high-profile opportunities must always be balanced against the absolute preservation of one's personal sovereignty and human dignity. The massive upcoming corporate venture, currently scheduled to invade global movie theaters on September 24th, 27, serves as a fascinating, highly complex case study in the cyclical nature of Hollywood storytelling and the persistent commercial desire to commodify historic cultural phenomena. The executive leadership at Lionsgate, spearheaded by Motion Picture Group Chairman Adam Fogelson, has made it abundantly clear that they view this upcoming project as a foundational pillar of their future theatrical slate, representing a completely fresh, highly innovative vision designed to reintroduce the classic lore to an entirely new demographic of viewers. To execute this ambitious strategy, they have leaned heavily on the legendary production prowess of Jason Blum and his highly successful company, Blumhouse, an entity that has completely dominated the modern horror landscape with massively profitable, culturally pervasive franchises like M3 GAN, The Purge, and Five Nights at Freddy's. Blum himself has expressed immense, unbridled enthusiasm for the project, publicly stating his deep, long-standing admiration for the original 1999 independent film, and acknowledging it as the true pioneer that successfully brought the found footage aesthetic to mainstream global audiences, thereby laying the essential groundwork for modern multi-million-dollar franchises like Paranormal Activity. The historical reality remains that without the exhausting, low-budget sacrifices made by Donahue and her small team in the freezing Maryland woods decades ago, the modern landscape of independent and mainstream horror cinema would look completely different, a fact that makes her complete absence from the new production a deeply poignant, highly symbolic moment in cinematic history. While the original creators Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick, along with former cast members Joshua Leonard and Michael C. Williams, have all chosen to participate as executive producers, navigating their own complex relationships with the legacy, Donahue stands completely alone in her total detachment, a solitary figure prioritizing her personal freedom over corporate inclusion. As the highly anticipated September 27 release date slowly approaches, the unfolding narrative surrounding this legendary franchise continues to serve as a powerful, deeply moving testament to the enduring human spirit behind the camera. The story of the original 1999 masterpiece is no longer just a tale of cinematic terror, brilliant internet marketing, and unprecedented box office success. It has permanently evolved into a profound, highly educational narrative about the immense value of artistic ownership, the critical necessity of self-protection within a massive corporate system, and the ultimate triumph of personal autonomy over commercial temptation. Heather Donahue's remarkable life journey from the dark, terrifying depths of the fictional Burkittsville forest to the bright, peaceful, and sovereign fields of Freedom, Maine stands as an inspiring, permanent reminder that true success is never measured by the size of a Hollywood paycheck or the persistence of global fame, but by the uncompromising ability to look into the mirror, speak one's absolute truth, and remain the sole, undisputed master of one's own destiny.